BLOODS is a new war drama directed by the one and only Spike Lee, and it just debuted on Netflix. This film stars a bunch of people, and I'm not going to remember all of their names as per usual. You got Chadwick Boseman, you got Delroy Lindo, you got Norm Lewis, Clark Peters, I think is his name. You got Jonathan Majors, you might remember him from The Last Black Man in San Francisco, and then the other member of the crew, I know him from The Wire, but I don't remember his actual name. Please, somebody in the comment section, help a brother out. So like I said, this is a war drama, and it follows the story of 4 Vietnam vets who reunite in the modern day because they want to go back to Vietnam so that they can locate the remains of their deceased captain. Their deceased captain passed away during the Vietnam War some time ago. They want to get his remains and return it to the States, return it to his family, but at the same time, they're also hunting for a shit ton of gold that they actually stored and hid back in those days, and so they want to find that money too. It's no secret at all that the world is pretty crazy right now, and there's a lot of injustice and a lot of things going on that need to be addressed and are being addressed and are being protested. And obviously, a large part of this is coincidence. I'm sure that Spike didn't know that everything was going to pop off the way that it was going to pop off with George Floyd and et cetera, et cetera. There's just no denying that this story, this film coming out at the time that it's coming out, is just very timely. It's very resonant and it's very important, and it's the type of movie that I think a lot of us need right now. I think that Spike Lee is a tremendous filmmaker, even though his filmography does hit or miss occasionally for me, but for the most part, I think that Spike is very talented behind the camera. He displays that in this movie for everyone to see. From a technical standpoint, there are multiple aspects of this film that should be up for an Oscar. I'm just saying. The sound design to the cinematography, it's lush, gorgeous looking cinematography with excellent and deliberate camera work. Everything looks good. Everything sounds good from a technical standpoint. Everything is A+. It's A1. It's exactly the way it should be. And I gotta commend Spike for putting as much detail and as much thought and as much passion into the filmmaking process of this movie. As far as the musical score, it's great, and it's gonna be something that I'm gonna enjoy listening to, especially during some of the more tense or emotional moments during the movie. But as far as the soundtrack goes, Marvin Gaye. I mean, all I have to say is Marvin Gaye, and panties should be dropping like that. Obviously, you have to look towards the performances in this movie. Spike Lee usually gets great performances out of his characters, out of his leads. No exception in this movie. Everybody in this movie absolutely kills it. The one who kills it most of all is Delroy Lindo. Delroy Lindo gives probably the performance of his career. He was mesmerizing. He was like the shining beacon that kind of allowed everybody else to shine in their own right. It really focuses on the rage and the plight of the black man, specifically the black man living in America. Themes and messages of this movie do center around racial oppression and do center around racial inequality that black people, black men in particular, have faced, not just with the police, but just when they fight in wars and then they come back home and then all of a sudden the rules, they still don't apply to them. It's just a heartbreaking thing to see black people give their all and to fight for this country, to die for this country, but then when they come back to this country from the war, they're not afforded the same type of rights and the same type of respect that maybe other people are. So a lot of this movie definitely on a surface level focuses on war and the effects they can have on people, specifically men that have served that deal with PTSD. PTSD is a very prevalent and heavy theme in this movie, but also it's a movie that deals with the internal and external wars. It deals with the wars that we fight out loud against opposing forces, and it deals with the wars that we fight in ourselves, wars that we don't want to tell anybody about. This is why Delroy Lindo's performance is so captivating and so heartbreaking, because his character maybe embodies the PTSD element and the internal and external war theme, maybe more than any other character in this movie. It's great to see a movie that actually takes you inside the mind of a black man like this. A black man who is frustrated, angry, tired, prosecuted, discriminated against. Spike Lee takes you inside that world. He takes you inside that mindset, and it's just a great thing to see, and it's great to see it backed up with great performances, music, production design, cinematography. Spike Lee does something also interesting with the aspect ratio in this movie, where he kind of changes it depending on whether it's a flashback or whether it's in a certain setting, blending and mixing all the different tones and moods, and the aspect ratio does add to cinematic quality of the movie in terms of this scene requiring this mood and this scene requiring something else. It's not just that, it's also the powerful imagery that Spike Lee is known to litter throughout his films. There's a ton of visual storytelling going on here, and there's also blatant in-your-face symbolism that Spike Lee goes for, and I would say that for the most part a lot of that is very effective. Even though it's a great film, I do feel like it's a flawed film, and for one thing, I do feel like there are certain characters and subplots that are added to this movie that I honestly don't think really needed to be in this movie. You kind of get why they're in the movie, sort of, but then when you actually step back and break break down the entire film as a whole, it feels like they kind of were there to add time to the movie. They didn't really need to. Like, you could take them out and the movie wouldn't really be that much different. Spike Lee is a director who is not really known for his subtlety throughout his career. Like, most of the time, if you need something subtle, he's pretty much going to smash it with a hammer. In this movie, I do feel like some of that, not all of it, in fact, most of it works, but some of it is a little bit too on the nose in terms of the imagery that he's using and the dialogue. It feels like he's putting it in your face and beating you over the head with it, and definitely that takes you out of the movie a couple of times because it's kind of like, okay, Spike, I get it. You don't need to be that obvious, that blatant with it. People are probably going to accuse this movie of being overindulgent and heavy-handed, and that's kind of fair for some of the imagery that he's trying to go for here. The biggest issue with this movie is actually the ending of the film. I feel like there are things that happen in this movie where it's not really earned by the time you get to the end. One of those movies that has like multiple endings, and I feel like other than maybe like one or two of them, some of the endings just don't really land for me. They didn't really work. In fact, one of them felt tacked on when you look at the rest of the narrative and the rest of the film. I think it's important. I think it's relevant. I think it's emotional. I think it's impactful. There are certain scenes in this movie that are incredibly tense. There are certain scenes that had me on the verge of tears. The Five Bloods is definitely flawed, but I can't say that I did not love the ambition here. I'm going to give this one a high mark of Superman Prime. All right, guys, those are my thoughts on The Five Bloods. Tell me, what did you think about it? What are your favorite Spike Lee movies of the last decade? Let's just go there. Put that in the comment section below and let me know. Please leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you're interested. If you like what you see, tell me how you feel, and stay tuned to hear more from the Man of Steel. Peace.